Hello everyone, I'm Sahil from Code Help. Welcome back to another video. Let's get started. In the previous video, we learned how can we do explicit typing with functions, its arguments, and the return type of the function. In this video, let's check how can we pass default and optional typed arguments in TypeScript. So before starting, let me run the live server extension which we added in the TS compiler tutorial. Also, let me put a watch on our index.ts file in the terminal by tsc index.ts hyphen w. Now, let me just compile the file and let's check the converted output.js file. Now, if we'll see here in JavaScript, we can call the function sum without any arguments being passed by just the function name like sum followed by open close parentheses, and it would work without any error. And it's not necessary to match the function signature at the calling place, and you can pass lesser or more number of arguments while calling the function, and that would not give you any error and would work fine. And as in case, if you pass more arguments like I do, like sum 10, 20, 30, then extra arguments are ignored by JavaScript and will consider only required arguments. Let me just save it and let's check the output on our console. So let's go to the console and we can see that it gave the output taking first two argument and have ignored the third argument 30. And in case of lesser number of arguments like sum 10, only one argument being passed, JavaScript considers the missing argument as undefined and will give the result considering available values. So let me just do that sum 10 and let's check the output for that as well. So it will return the sum as nan as undefined does not have a number value. So that's how it is in JavaScript. But with TypeScript, it's not the same. To confirm that, let's go back to the TS file. So coming over here, if I call the sum function with one argument, I'll get this error saying expected two arguments, as you can see on hovering. So in case of TypeScript, while calling a function, it should match with exact function signatures always, which is another default behavior of TypeScript, like strict type checking. So then, how can we deal with cases where we want the function calling to be flexible and allowed to skip the value if that is not known at the time of calling the function and have this kind of flexibility in our function calling? So for that case, we can take use of a feature that is provided by a TypeScript by declaring an optional parameter which allows to add variable number of arguments at the time of calling. So let's see how can we do that. In our function sum, if let's say I want to add an optional argument, I can do that by adding it here as C and followed by a question mark. And also I can provide the type of this as well by colon and the type, let's say a number. So adding a question mark after an argument signifies that this argument should be treated as optional and not a mandatory argument. Let me just log the extra parameter I have just added to the console by in the function definition adding a console.log C. Now, if I call my function sum by passing a third argument, it would work fine. So let me just add an extra third parameter and you can see it has worked fine. And even if I don't pass it, it is not showing me any error whatsoever. But what would be the value of C in that case? Let's check it on console. So in this case, I have not passed the C, and let's go to the console and see what is the output. So C is considered as undefined by TypeScript if it is not passed explicitly by the user at the time of calling. So let's say we don't want our variable to have a value of undefined, and let's say we want it to have a default value in case the user has forgotten, or let's say he does not have any value for that argument. So to deal with this case, we can declare a default value of an argument. In case we are not passing any value, the default value will be used by TypeScript. So we can simply do that by assigning a value to C as equals to, let's say, 30. Now, if I save it and check again the output on the console, it shows me the value of C as the default value I passed, as I have called the sum function with only two params from my .ts file. So the C is printed as 30 here. Now, in case if I pass the value for argument C at the time of calling to be 50, then it would not take the default value, rather it will use the value passed by the user and would use it to calculate the business logic. Now, if I save it and check again the output in console, it shows me the value of C to be 50, as we can see. Also, in case I am giving a default value to an argument, like in our case, then we need not to use the question mark. So I can remove this question mark after C. We will use either an optional or a default value, and but will not use both of them together, as if we are giving a default value, then anyways that argument will not be treated as optional, as it will always have a default value. So let me just remove the question mark. Now, an important point to note about using an optional or default value for an argument is that it should always be placed at the last in the argument list. So, you can't have an argument optional followed by an argument which is required. That won't work as intended. So, let me show you this now in our function. You cannot make B as optional and C as required. So if I do that, then it would not work. After doing these changes, now if I call the sum with only two values, then how would TypeScript know whether value 20 is being passed for the optional argument B, or an explicit value being passed for the required argument C? So that would not work, and you must always place your optional argument, or if more than one, the list of arguments at the end. Also, one more thing to note down is that in case of passing a default value, you must take care the type definition of the argument as well. Like let's say in our case, the variable C is of type number, but if I try to pass a string value into it, let's say hello, then it will give me an error and won't allow me to enter a string. So make sure to put a properly typed default value, and also please make a note to keep your default parameters at the end after the required parameters, as you need to provide them always. So that's all in this video. In case you have any doubt in any of the options, you can mention in the comment section. Hope this video helped you. If it did, please like it, add a comment, also share it with your friends, and ask them to subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you and see you in the next lecture.